Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Deed Harrison here of Chiropractic Biophysics Seminars and Technique and Chiropractic Biophysics Nonprofit, our spine research organization. We always have new guests, exciting information, brand new research, and clinical practice tidbits for you guys out there. Welcome to the Chiropractic Biophysics Podcast.
Hey everyone, Dr. Joe here with the CBP podcast, and as you guys can see, we're missing somebody. And so Jason is filling as our co-host because our esteemed Dr. Deed Harrison, one of the most published researchers of all time in our chiropractic profession, can't seem to schedule accordingly and manage a schedule. So he's going to laugh because, I'm going to make a clip about this because the last minute he's like, oh my gosh, I'm double booked. So we're going to make fun of him for perpetuity, for a lifetime, because now he's going to be one in a hole the rest of his life with podcasts. So I just want to welcome everybody and apologize. We had a great podcast that only Dr. Jason and Dr. Deed and myself heard because Jason was on a hotel Wi-Fi and and also Dr. Joe Betts was on it. About 75% of Dr. Jason, who is my esteemed colleague, co-host tonight, it didn't get uploaded. So we're going to do this again. And now I'll let you introduce our special guest. And I know that his Wi-Fi is working great. So I'll let you take it over from here, Dr. Jason. Welcome to the CBP podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Ferrantelli. Jason Jaeger here, one of the CBP instructors, and I've got big shoes to fill sitting in tonight as your co-chair or your co-host without Deed joining us. And I'm certain throughout the podcast that you'll make sure and give him a hard time. And I know that I'm going to hear it endlessly that my Marriott hotel Wi-Fi didn't work. So I'm really looking forward to getting past that. But more importantly, we have a very special guest. We have a special man, a special chiropractic doctor, and a longtime friend, Dr. John Maltby. Dr. Maltby, welcome.
Hey, nice to be here.
Yeah.
Who's Deed? Deed who?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of funny when we're teaching at seminars and he's like, yeah, we did this research study in 2004. It was published in Spine, and we could discriminate between hypolordosis, acute and chronic neck pain subjects. And going through rock curves and stuff. And then I'll show a slide. I'm like, here's me digitizing. I got the esteemed Dr. Don Harrison, his father behind him. I got Dr. Tad Yannick, who was one of the early researchers. I'm like, there's no Deed Harrison. So, I sit back and say, has Deed really done anything in our profession? He's not here. So you have to question. I'm just saying.
I understand.
For the record.
No. 100%. So let's get warmed up. Dr. Maltby, you're a chiropractor. You're a chiropractic doctor, and you're from Blythe, California. Start off, give us about 2 or 3 quick minutes, and tell us about your chiropractic story. What brought you here today?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I just got to the chase. Chiropractic saved my life. I was very ill, very sick. Lots of bad throat issues, something like that. A good friend of mine, Dave Cobble, came by one day and said, why don't you see a chiropractor? And I go, what's a chiropractor? And anyway, went in, the guy took pictures of my neck. I got adjusted. My throat went down. My fever was gone. It was the first healthy season I had as a swimmer and a 2-time All-American college. And I owe that to chiropractic. I always wanted to be an attorney, but things happen. And I go, oh my gosh, I need to find something to do. And I said, I'm going to Palmer. So I drove back to Palmer, became a chiropractor, was on a full scholarship while I was there, which was really wonderful. It was funded by me. So in the winters, I worked in restaurants, and in the summers, I laid sod or lifeguarded at the beach. But it was a great time. It was before student loan, so we just had to figure it out. I've been in practice in Blythe, California. Next month will be 48 years in practice.
Wow.
No. Still seeing patients. I think we had 5 new ones today. And I'm by myself, no associate. So still having a really good time. My political career got involved in ICA California probably 40 years ago. Probably spent off and on 15, 20 years as chairman of the board or president. got on the ICA board as Western Regional Director. And then after a couple of years, I ran for president. Didn't like the guy that was doing it. I thought he was promoting his practice management stuff. And so I ran against him and I won. So I spent 2 terms as ICA president, 2 terms as chairman of the board. And then I went off the board. And a few years later, I got a call from Jerry Klum. And Jerry said, John, I need a favor. And I go, yeah, what? He goes, would you take my place on the board of the WFC? I said, wow. And I said, how important is it? And Jerry said, John, there's 2 things that are important that I brag about in my chiropractic career. Number 1, of course, is being president of Life West University and how we got to develop that. He goes, number 2 is 30 years on the board of directors of the WFC and how I got to see how chiropractic changed the world, how we had influence around the world that we'd never had before had it been for the WFC. Well, that's a pretty big endorsement. And how, what? How do you tell a guy like Jerry Klum no?
Right.
So this was a little over 10 years ago. So I took the job and 10 years on the board. The last 2 years, I was president of WFC. We had a new president. I promised my wife I was going to step back. And then through a series of events, there was a vacancy for Secretary General, and I had several calls, said, John, you need to do this. And so actually I looked at my wife and I go, what do you think? And she goes, I think you need to do this. So I took over as interim Secretary General of the WFC the end of October last year. It has been a whirlwind tour and I'm having a ball.
Wow.
I'm starting at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning on calls and finishing late at night and loving it. In fact, I was telling Jason earlier, yesterday morning, I started out in the Netherlands. And last night I ended up, with mainland China, talking with a group, with the association that wants to put up chiropractors in hospitals in China. Think about that.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm having a blast. So that might have been over 2 minutes, but that's what we're doing. That's what's going on.
And here's the deal, John, you're in full-time practice. Yeah. And I mean, I only look at, because I actively retired from practice in 2012, and I swear I don't have enough time. And my gosh, kudos to you for doing this, because I tell you, that's a lot of responsibility. And then you have your patient responsibility on top of that. And I think just it's amazing because you being in practice, what it's like day to day still, where I'll be honest, for me, I went in to see my chiropractor today. Actually, I saw 2 chiropractors today. One was for therapy on my shockwave on my shoulder, and the other one was who I see for adjustments. And we got talking, and he was reminiscing about some things about how much life has changed since we graduated about the same time. And he was like, man, it's so different now. And you being in politics now, I think it's huge to where day to day what the struggles of my brothers and sisters are dealing with, because I'll be honest, I've kind of lost touch with that side of things, and so kudos that you're doing this and burning the candle at both ends and loving life. So well, thank you.
So, one thing that helps, if I have any advice for anybody, unplug the TV.
Yep.
Just unplug the TV. There's so much time out there. And yeah, again, now I'm going to be honest, we are starting to cut back the practice a little bit. Not a lot, but probably, things are going to change over the next 12 months. But can you believe, I have no idea how guys did stuff like this without a cell phone, without a computer, without email. I mean, I remember years ago in practice when I go, oh my God, how did they come up with this kind of technology? You know what it was? It was a fax machine. Oh my God.
And it's
God, they're going to have bathrooms inside the house someday, right? I mean, so anyway.
I'll chime in one thing on the technology side, because obviously that's what I do day to day.
Right.
I was actually at my chiropractor today, and I'm like, oh, he's like, so what do you got today in your app? And I'm like, here's a beta, and I just hit record. And he hadn't really seen it, with my scribe that integrates everything. And he's like, I go, just talk to me. Ask me anything like my normally daily visit and talk to me. And then as soon as we're done, we had a whole report like that was all done, formatted in a soap note. He was like, oh my gosh. I go, I wish I was in practice for this technology, because
Yeah.
how many hours did I spend going through who came on the schedule, who not? But anyway, this is not a promote posture screen type of a deal, but
Right.
I just wanted to say that with technology, it's been pretty awesome. But
Yeah.
thank you for all that you're doing already. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
100%. Yeah, we've come a long, long way from the fax machine. And think before the fax machine, you used to have to write a letter and get it across the country or across the pond and wait weeks or months. So big, big differences. John, I want you to tell me approximately when the WFC was founded and when it started, and what was the catalyst that caused the world and chiropractic to decide that we needed the WFC.
Well, Jason, what most people don't understand, the WFC or the concept of WFC was kind of it was an ICA chiropractor, Dr. Jaeger. It was in Tucson, and he was seeing what's going on. He goes, "Why are we not represented at the WHO?" So he was a lifelong, strong ICA member. So he went to the ICA and presented the idea, we need to go global. We can have international, our name, but unless we're actually international, it doesn't mean anything. And by the way, international doesn't mean you got a couple members in a bunch of different countries. International means what globe of influence do you actually have? So his vision at the time was to say, how do we get involved with the WHO? So the ICA said, you know what? Let's send you there. So they sent him and an attorney from Canada that had worked for the ICA, and ICA paid for it. That attorney's name was David Chapman Smith. And
I've heard of him.
Yeah, exactly. So Gary
Yeah.
and David went to Geneva and basically came back, we need to get involved. Over the next couple of years, between a gathering in the UK and the final one in Australia, the WFC was founded. Now, it took several years for the WFC to be in attendance to finally get to what we call NSA, a non-state actor. And by the way, there are a lot of people say, oh, no, we have relations with the WHO. No, they don't. Okay, they got a library.
Right.
Okay. The only chiropractic organization of the 150 some NSAs for chiropractic is the WFC.
Right.
So the deal is this: are we involved in different committees within the WHO? Absolutely. Does it make an impact? Yes, because we're at the table. To me, what people understand, the biggest impact that WFC has is that when I went to Rwanda, I spent a week in Rwanda a couple of years back. I didn't meet with just people. I met with cabinet members. I got to tell them about chiropractic and how we can, help their health issues and make a real impact on their country. And I'd like to say that, oh God, I would love to say, well, you know why I met to meet with them? Because, they said, oh my God, John Maltby's coming. They didn't say that. They
Right.
said it's the WFC with official relations with the WHO. That's what opened the door. So I look at it as an opportunity to open the door to countries that we would not have access to if there was not an affiliation with the WHO. Right now, we're over 95 countries. The WHA World Health Assembly is still going to go on. I will be there in May in Geneva. It's a week-long event. And during that time, we're already scheduled meetings with different countries. And the countries we're scheduling meetings with are those that need and want chiropractic. Okay. I don't think a lot of people understand how many countries in the world, there are chiropractors there, but it's not regulated.
Right.
There's no licensing. There's no anything like that. So we're trying to get in there to come up with a way to make sure it's regulated and that we have ethical chiropractors within that country.
And let me touch on the regulation and unpack that for a minute. I was fortunate enough to attend again at the WFC in Denmark last year as a delegate for the ICA, as a voting delegate. And what really struck me, it struck my heart and it gave me chills, is we have about 100 country members. Is that right, John?
We're at 95 right now. Yes.
Okay, so almost 100 country members, and sitting in that room of all the voting delegates, what the United States is talking about, what Australia is talking about, and what Canada is talking about is vastly different from the world. We are a few generations away from chiropractors going to jail because chiropractic was illegal. It was illegal because we were practicing medicine without a license. We got professional status because of regulation. And so having a profession is a result of the states giving us regulation. And America is 50 different countries, 50 different states. So these men and women were getting up and giving their report from their country, from Asia, from Africa, from all over the world, just wanting to be recognized as a profession. So can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is, in fact, that was one of the major things we talked about last night with China, trying to figure out how to get qualified chiropractors within the country and to make sure there's some type of regulation set forth so that they can meet minimum standards. I mean, Jason, you were there. What was the one common denominator about a lot of those countries, especially South America, is American gringo chiropractor going down there, teaching a weekend class and handing somebody a certificate.
Yeah.
And so they got to hang the certificate up on their wall that says chiropractic. And I'm not even going to begin to talk about some of the schools that do that. Okay. I don't want to go there. I will eventually. But the point is that that's the problem. That's one of the things they're really upset about. So we're trying to figure out ways with the WFC to where they meet a minimum standard. In fact, I will be meeting in Vegas next month with the Latin America accreditation team. How do we get to these colleges to understand how important accreditation is? I mean, I had a graduate of college from Brazil that wants to go to Ireland. They can't go. Why? The school's not accredited. Okay, It's a bad school. I'm not saying it's a bad school, but to understand that standard of education. One of the things that's really good that we did in the last few years is we set up with the International Board of Chiropractic Examiners was what we call an ITC, which is it's basically a test that we've set up that any country can use that will establish minimum standards that they have to pass. Okay, we have the national board. We take that for granted, right? Most countries have nothing. So what we're trying to do is to develop tools so that if a country says, okay, we want chiropractors, how do we make sure they're qualified? These are the tools that we've provided and that have been recognized by an international organization that they go, yeah, you got to take this test. Okay. Or you have to meet this criteria. And that's the big thing. In fact, I dealt with that in Rwanda. I dealt with that in China when I was there. How do we develop those standards? And we're providing the tools because, again, I never forget, sorry to go on this, but I remember I was in Berlin a few years back, and I'm having lunch at one of the things, a guy sitting next to me from Greece. And I said, what's your biggest concern? And he goes, well, John, my biggest concern is whether or not I make it through the day without getting arrested. I go, wow.
2 years ago.
No, that would have been in Brazil. Pardon me, that was in Berlin. That's 5-6 years ago. Okay.
Okay. So not long ago, there's still men and women out there that their concern isn't overhead, isn't getting a patient, isn't making a spinal correction. It's, am I going to get arrested?
Oh yeah. It's still today. Not 2 years ago. It's today.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to identify some of those countries, but I'm on the phone or in communication regularly with guys. How do we, what can you do to help us? Okay. Because that is the fear. They are practicing illegally.
Right. That's right. Because they don't have a profession.
Right.
So they've got a schooling, they've got a training, they don't have a regulatory agency, and they're breaking the law.
Right. And by the way, two of the guys I'm dealing with in one of these countries in Southeast Asia is basically, they graduated from Cleveland. Another one graduated from Life University. So it's not like they're doing weekend courses. These are qualified graduates. These guys passed the national boards. but they cannot go and practice in their country legally.
Right.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's insane. So again, that's the focus. I mean, remember the vision of the WFC: all people, all people, all ages, all nations, access to chiropractic care. Well,
Yeah.
Yep.
and that's what we're trying to do. That's the vision. It's
Yep.
not all these other crazy arguments going on.
Right.
Right.
Right. And I have just a naive question because I think a lot of chiropractors, if I may, would have this question because as we all went through COVID and we saw what the WHO pushed with everything like that, I think this is just me. I could be wrong. I think the average chiropractor looks at the WHO and says, "Oh, wait, the WHO is the WFC, and the WHO is going to tell the WFC everything to do." And how to do everything. Like they're controlling us. Can you speak to that?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
for
Yeah.
some clarity for the normal chiropractor?
Yeah, absolutely. WFC represents chiropractic to the WHO. We do not represent the WHO to the world.
Thank you.
I,
Because
I, I also say it. Have they ever dictated us and told us we had to do anything? No. Have we cooperated with them on different events? Yes. But as the WHO ever said, you have to do this, and this, and we're going to define chiropractic for you. The answer is no. Anybody saying that it's nonsense. It's nonsense.
yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for answering that.
So, John, I'm going to go back a little bit to an earlier question, the formation of the WFC. So you mentioned David Chapman Smith and that he was counsel for the ICA. And there was a moment in the past where a catalyst occurred where a need was perceived to form a world organization. Talk about the founding members, talk about the rights of the founding members versus the standard delegates, and just spend some time there.
Well, I think that there were countries that saw the need, and ICA was one of the founders. Okay, the CCA was a late one coming. CCA was involved. The BCA, British was, Australia was. Everybody kind of got the vision. They go, wow. And what was really interesting, ACA, same thing, says we need to be involved in this too.
Right.
Okay, and so the thing is, we came to the table, and a lot of great things happened. Okay, did we agree all the time? Yes, but some of the stuff that, since I've been on the board and involved with the WFC for the last 10 plus years, all these controversies that everybody talks about, it never comes up. Why? Because we don't care. What do we care about? All people, all ages, all nations, access to chiropractic care. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, so the other stuff, so the founding members have come together on that. I think, boy, I hope we don't get in trouble with this.
Come on, get in trouble.
Let's put it this way: in the U.S., in fact, I got accused of being "you're so American." I love it, but the point is, in the United States, let's put it this way: WHO and the UNs, they're not like high on our, it's like, oh my God, we have to do it. Not that. Outside the United States, it's very important. It's very important to see that that's their only hope is to work through the WHO, to work through those agencies that can help to establish chiropractic in their countries. Well, within the WHO, we're the only guys. We're the only guys. So by maintaining that relationship and keeping that door open, let's put it this way: there's a whole lot more people on our side of the fence. So we just keep moving forward with it, and it's. I mean, there've been questions about what recently happened with the USA and our pullout of the WHO. How does that affect WFC's relationship with the WHO? Doesn't. Okay, our relationship with the WHO is not dependent upon the US. Okay, it's dependent upon our representing chiropractic and demonstrating them how chiropractic is important to world health.
And I think that's really, really important because if I had that question, John, then the average chiropractor out there, and I know there's a lot of people spewing misinformation in chiropractic about some of these political things. And I'm so glad that you're here, as the spokesman to be able to tell the truth on what's going on. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing I want to throw out there, you may get to this, but when I was in Rwanda, and guys, hey, I'm a chiropractor. Okay, I draw lines on films, and I got trained by Burl Petitbaum when he wasn't allowed on campus. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's how far I go back with this kind of stuff. But one of the things that really comes to mind here is that it's about what we do and making chiropractic available. That's it.
Mhm.
Okay, the rhetoric has got to stop. It's about everybody coming together and making chiropractic available for everybody. And for all the nonsense that's going on, I mean, people send me articles by some guys that guys write. I don't read them anymore. I don't want to. Why? Because it's nonsense.
Yeah.
Let's stay focused on moving the ship
Uh,
forward.
uh, uh, I know somebody that obviously I supported. He would call that fake news, right? So,
Yeah.
you always sit back and you think behind things and say, okay, what may be the agenda behind people putting that forward? I don't know. I hope that it's basically people that just don't understand that somebody told somebody whose perception was something, and their heart, I hope, is in the right place, but they're just misdirected and they just need to kind of understand that. And that's my hope, because I always think the best of people and always think that they have the best motivations, and truly deep down. And I hope that's the case. And they wake up and realize, what, we weren't lied to. This is the truth. Because there's been a lot of misrepresentation about what Deed's father would do if he was in practice right now, if Don was around. And what's funny is that, John, you were there. I was there. Jason was there. Joe Betts was there. Deed was there. Of course, we saw everything back then and knew Don. And Don was who got us motivated to do the things that we do. He
Yeah.
saw the passions and how somebody was really good at stuff. Like he said, "Hey, Joe, you're really good at this, that, and the other." When I honestly didn't think I could do anything, he saw something in me, just like he saw something in Jason. And he said, "Jason, I need to task you with this," just like he did with Dr. Joe Betts, the same thing. And when I see people say things like they know what was going on during that whole time when we were there, we were the ones there doing this, help writing a lot of this stuff. I just sit back and say, "Man, you are so misdirected." But anyway, that's just my little piece. I'm just a drummer at heart. I just play like I'm a chiropractor. That's my two pieces, right? So anyway,
Well,
Well,
God love you. You
well,
got a good heart. I don't feel that way about some of these guys. I think they do have an agenda.
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, they're selling something. And
Hmm.
again, when everything you're saying is doing nothing to unite, but everything to divide,
Yep.
you got a problem.
Yep.
Okay. And again, I've been through this. I basically started on the WICA politically 45 years ago.
yeah.
I mean, I was there for the merger thing. By the
Yep.
way, I voted against the merger. Why? Because I thought if the merger happened, there'd be three associations instead of one. Wasn't going to fix anything. Um, but through all the craziness, at the end of the day, guys, let's just get people on tables. Let's
Right.
just start adjust some people. Let's start correcting spines. Let's start,
Yep.
going by, the basic law of physics. Form equals function. How it's
Mhm.
shaped is how it works. What are we doing to change the form? Okay.
Yep.
And then
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
well said.
So John, when you had worked your way into leadership and an executive role with the ICA, which is absolutely no surprise to me, and Joe Ferrantelli mentioned Don Harrison. Don Harrison is a friend. He's like a father, like a brother, and had just a big impact on us, on some of the folks mentioned, and on chiropractic in general. I think that if Don had lived, we would have seen him as the next ICA president, and maybe he would have followed Jerry Clum or followed you and been involved with the WFC. What are your thoughts on that? Tell me a little bit about that time.
I just remember, I got to be so careful talking about Don because I want to cry. When I was ICA
Yeah.
president, he was on the board, and I called him one night, and we used to talk late at night all the time. But I told him, I said, "Hey, man, I need a favor." I said, "Every practice guideline out there is written by insurance companies." He goes, "Oh, that's right." I said, "What can you guys? Is there any way you guys can come up with a practice guideline based upon research that's written by chiropractors?" So yeah, that was my idea, but I had no idea how to do it. Come on, I'm a plumber's kid. So he goes, "Oh, that's awesome." So he called me back the next night. He goes, "You know what? Before we do that, let's come up with X-ray guidelines." I go,
Yeah.
"Don, do whatever you want, just whatever you make it work." And some of you guys were involved in writing both
Yep.
those documents.
Yep.
Okay. It was a 24 hours thing. And you know what? Sometimes he was so into it when he got sick and didn't tell anybody because he
Yep.
wanted to get that project done. Sometimes I blame myself. I mean, I'm over it kind of, but the idea is that you guys know Don well enough. Once you light the fuse, get out of the way.
Yep.
And,
And,
and
and and
yeah.
he didn't let us stop. I mean, obviously, I was intimately involved during that whole time, and I was like, "Hey, Ferrantelli, are you going to get us your part? You got another 50 articles you got to go through." I'm like, "Don, I'm seeing patients." He's like, "Doesn't matter. This is for your future, for your kids' future," and going on and on and on and on. And I remember, for the PCCRP and the ICA best practices, man. We were out there in Wyoming, and
Oh,
all of us there, all our computers going through, and we had Dr. Len Siskin with this major database, and he was using FileMaker back then. He's like giving all these tasks to everybody, and Don made it happen.
oh yeah.
Don made it happen.
No,
I
no,
mean, if it,
I remember I showed up for 1 week and he asked me to come up. And then when I saw the logistics and everything that they were doing, you guys flying into Salt Lake, figured out a way, they're picking you up in a van or whatever, driving you to Evanston. And he's ordering Chinese food for everybody, so you guys keep working. It was amazing.
yeah,
It was during that time that he and I talked, I think when he came to the realization, the next step beyond the research and what they were doing was beginning to become more politically active. And
mhm.
he actually talked to me he goes, "What do you think about me being an ICA president?" And I said, "Dom, one step at a time, man. I don't want you to go over the top." So, um, but no, yeah, he understood uh, the work ethic. It
Oh, yeah.
wasn't just about having the vision. It was just about having the tools. A lot of people have that.
Yeah.
Dom was the guy that said, "Let's get her done."
Yeah,
And
Oh, yeah.
that's what he did. He figured out a way to get her done. And I can never the chiropractic profession, where you're a biophysics guy or not, doesn't matter. Okay.
right.
The chiropractic profession has no idea how much they owe to the perseverance and dedication of Don Harrison. It's not even close with
And
what he did.
he was, I have to say, obviously, I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for Don, quite honestly. I mean, I owe everything to him and saying Indeed. And let's leave Deed out of it because he'll want me to buy him dinner if I keep saying that. But what I think was so unique is that Don had a way of finding out the motivation that would get me motivated, to get Joe Betts motivated, to get Jason Haas motivated, to get Jason Jaeger motivated, to get Lenny motivated, to get you motivated. Like, he literally was a master at understanding what drove us. And I mean, I look back and say, my God, the things that had to have occurred for me to become a chiropractor and go to drop out of school, and Don kept me in school, to now I'm doing what I'm doing in software and teaching with Jason and everybody else with CBP. And I, I, I'm sad that there's so many chiropractors that only know his name and don't realize that if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't have been a Deed who now has God knows how many publications we have in randomized clinical control trials that Deed has put out. I think we're like at 20 randomized clinical control trials, right? And what he set forth is like truly amazing. And literally, we wouldn't have, I know for a fact, we would not have x-ray rights right now we would not
Right.
have x-ray rights. They would have been taken away if it wasn't for Don, that ICA best practice and the PCCRP, which led to all the real research articles that Deed and Paul Oakley did in dose response to all these other top Q1 journals. It was all that start. It was then that really started it all. So anyway, thank you for walking us down that memory lane.
You bet.
It was important.
Yeah, that was an important thing to touch on. So coming back to the WFC, and you mentioned that it's important to have a seat at the table, and you mentioned that the ICA was a big part of starting the WFC, and that you mentioned the ACA said, well, I want to be at the table. So there's founding members. Now, let me zoom out and take a quick little side rail. I believe and I see and I experience that chiropractors, we're pretty much the same. We're pretty much aligned to coin a chiropractic phase. 80-90% of us are pretty well in the middle and like-minded, and we want to get patients on tables and get them adjusted because we see health benefit as a result of that. And there's some folks on the far left and on the far right that are really loud. And don't mistake me when I say that there should be a dissenting voice. There should be a minority voice. But we don't want a destructive voice on the peripheries that hurt chiropractic and hurt Americans and hurt citizens of the world and hurt chiropractors around the world getting the rights to have a profession and regulation. So that dissent, those minority voices that I think aren't good for the profession, talk about you should leave the table, you shouldn't have a seat at the table. But these founding members that are a part of forming the WFC, there's something important that those founding members have that, say, a new country that joined next month would have different as far as voting rights. Talk about that.
Well, the main thing is that there's 7 regions of the WFC, and we're going up to 15 board members. And so there's, based upon number of members, dictates how many members we have on the board. But every country has a voice. I mean, you were there in Copenhagen. We have the assembly. Every country is given the opportunity to speak. Every country is given the opportunity to share what issues they have. By the way, my email's full every day from different countries around the world. And the thing is, now they have a voice. Now they have somebody can respond. Now they have somebody that can refer them to resources. Okay, that's the kind of stuff that some of these guys on the far extremes have no idea about. I mean, again, it's time to get in trouble again. The biggest enemy to chiropractic has always been chiropractors.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
just has. Okay, if you don't think exactly the way I do, then you're not a real chiropractor. If you don't adjust exactly the way I do, then you're not a real chiropractor. If you don't use the same terminology that I use, then you're not a real chiropractor. My God, again, we've heard this about circle the wagons and shoot in. Okay, I think that's the advantage of the WFC. I mean, somebody asked me, would you guys ever talk about this and then fight about this? No, we never have. Why? Because that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is what we can do to help countries and people in those countries to have more access to chiropractic care.
Right.
That's it. To provide those resources. By the way, what policies does WFC put down mandating how you practice chiropractic? You've read those, right?
Yeah.
There aren't any. They're not there. Oh, yeah, but what about WFC's mandate on this? It's not there. Read the literature. It's not there. No, we don't. Well, what about when you guys talk about that? We don't talk about that because we don't care about that. What we care about is what do we need to do to make chiropractic available. That's why alliances we've had with, with Norm and the National Board of Chiropractic, IBCE, to basically develop a plan to where we can establish minimum standards.
Right.
And by the way, that was a 30-country deal. That wasn't something WFC dictated. It's like the ICEA, which somebody's really, that's an agenda there to change chiropractic education. No, it's not. The ICEA, which is the International Chiropractic Education Alliance, which we put together through WFC, it's a forum for colleges internationally to come together and network. That's it. There's no agenda there. It's kind of like ACC. We're not trying to say we have to do this. All we're doing is creating a forum. And for the first time in history, there are more chiropractic colleges outside the United States than there are inside the United States. Okay. And they're looking for help. They're looking for guidance. Okay. We're providing that. Okay. And oh no, there has to be an agenda. Oh, shut up. No, there isn't. Well, I take that back. There is an agenda. More people, all people, all nations, all ages, chiropractic care. That is the agenda. And if
I love it, John.
If you add anything else to that, you're nuts, because that is not the agenda. Not the agenda.
So there's nothing nefarious that happens in that room. And you know, I got to sit in the first meeting in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. And I think as a result of being in the room, I ended up being called Darth Vader. Darth Vader's pretty cool, so I'll take it. You know, the helmet and the big cape. But yeah, there was nothing nefarious going on in the room. It's people talking about the mission of chiropractic for chiropractors and for patients. So you know, that 80 or 90% of chiropractors all being pretty well aligned. There's chiropractic, and then there's approaches in chiropractic or techniques, we may call it. Last week, I took my son down to Parker University, and I took him down to the Parker Performance Center to get a technique or an approach in chiropractic. And my son got treatment with functional neurology.
Right.
I've spent the last year working with my son and trying to listen to my son and keep my son aligned with me, because he's got a chronic regional pain syndrome when he wants to amputate his leg because his leg hurts so bad. He's like, well, Dad, why don't I just cut it off? There's nothing in my specialty, my approach, chiropractic biophysics, that's how I practice, that I could treat with chronic regional pain syndrome. By the way, I tried, because there's miracles in chiropractic, and sometimes you just see a miracle with the adjustment. But in this case, I wasn't able to solve that for my son. So I don't understand what they do at the Parker Performance Center. It's not something I trained in. But what I don't do is go in there and say, you don't do what I do, so therefore what you do is bad, right? And that's what's happening with this vocal minority, far left, far right. And instead of saying, let's honor our differences, because there's something that, you know, use medicine as an analogy. The kidney specialist doesn't do what the brain surgeon does. But oh my gosh, they don't say the other guy's bad, right? They just don't let the kidney guy operate on the brain. So, you know, what did we get out of my son going to a different approach or technique in chiropractic in this room where we honor our differences as long as it's evidence-based and it's patient-centered and we're doing the best for the patient, right? What did I get? I got a diagnosis that confirmed that my son has a peripheral nerve problem. I've spent a year running around circles and around this country with the medical profession trying to figure out if I should or shouldn't cut his leg off. Well, I've got useful information to be able to move the ball with my son because my heart and my mind is open to the differences within chiropractic. So I don't know, Joe or John, if you want to add anything to that, but the course of the conversation made me compelled to want to talk about that.
Well, Joe, Jason, you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing unique about my practice, I'm in the Southwest Desert, okay? And so I get exposed to a lot of stuff that a lot of doctors don't. In the summer, there's a little town of Quartzsite. If you ever saw that movie Vagabond or whatever it was, it was a film about a lady who's in a little town of Quartzsite, Arizona. In the summer, the population's about 2,500, 3,500 people. Right now, the population's about 1.2 million. Okay. At one time, I was in the top 5% Medicare providers in the world, in the United States. Am I that good? No, but I got a bunch of old people. There's snowbirds that come in. So I get people of all ages and all sizes. In fact, I remember Dan Murphy called me one day. I said, Murphy, I'm busy right now. I'm with a pediatric case. He goes, really? How old? I go, 45. Because at that time, that's a kid in my office, right? The point is, I'm exposed to so many different patients that have been exposed to so many different techniques and so many different types of care. And you know what? Most of them work. Most of them work. Well, no, I got to adjust you my way. It's my way or it doesn't work. No, I listen to my patients. Wow, really? So that seemed to help best. Okay. You know what? All right, we'll do this. But the idea is that to be so ingrained in stone, again, if you don't use my words, you don't use my techniques, then you're not a real chiropractor. That's nonsense. That's what has to stop. That's when we have to, we may not like the whole family, but we're still family.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out a way to work this together to advance this, because guess what? The world doesn't get it. They don't understand these fights. Okay, so these guys that are writing stuff that has one purpose, promote their limited agenda and to be divisive in the profession, I have no time for. I just don't. So what you're saying is right. It's a great example. And, Jason, he's on our list, right? But, you got to do what you got to do, and to reach out and find that, bad example, but I'll go ahead and do it again since I'm getting in trouble tonight. So I was taking a seminar on one of the top philosophy guys. Everybody loves him. He's all over the place. And he's a nice guy. He's a good friend of mine. And man, my thoracic's rubbed. He goes, well, I said, no, I'll adjust. And I go, okay, just don't, you got to do it this way. You do. Oh no, I know what I'm doing. Lay me face down and pop the rip head out. Boom. Thank God Murphy was there to put it back in. But this guy's one of the, I said, do not do that. And he did it. And yet one of the best adjustments I've ever seen went to probably what we would not consider a conservative chiropractic college. She weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. And I was up visiting my brother in Idaho. And he goes, oh, you'll love her. So I go and I go, she can't move anything. It's one of the most complete, perfect, beautiful adjustments I've received in my life. Okay. But it wasn't based upon her diploma. It wasn't based upon her jumping. And by the way, I did find out later she was adjusted by BJ. But the point is that she gave the adjustment. You know what technique she did?
No.
I don't either. It didn't matter. Okay. Yeah, she made the adjustment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Joe, you want to add anything? Or I've got lots of questions for John. We could go on for 3 hours, but you comment on techniques or approaches or anything John said so far. Joe, you're muted.
That's because I had a little tickle in my throat, so sorry about that. No, I think it's spot on everything that you said, and I totally agree. And it mimics what you started off with, shut off the TV, because I can tell you what, if you turn on the TV, it's the same thing, from the different aspects of people fighting about, what's going on. And, I don't even have to say Minnesota or with ICE or whatnot. There's these polarizing ends, and then there's like 85 to 90% of the people in the middle that it's those extremes that always seem to have some loud voices that do nothing to bring us together. So right. I fully agree.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we're going to do about one more question, and then the format of the CBP podcast, which was one of the first, if maybe not the first chiropractic podcast ever. Joe started in 2000.
And so in 2007 was when I believe, I want to say that we were the first chiropractic podcast. I think so, because I begged Don to do this. We're doing a podcast. He's like, what's a podcast? I'm like, I just need to record you. Just, I want you to blab on for a while. Right. And those recordings are still on our feed. If you go back, most of them, I don't have all of them since back then. We would be the longest running one of the longest running podcasts if we weren't, we got caught up in life. But yeah, 2007 was when it started.
Wow. So we've been around a long time, and part of what makes the original chiropractic podcast, the CBP podcast special, is at the end the host will summarize a research paper. So I'm gonna follow suit with that, and I'm gonna do Jason Jaeger's version of summarizing a paper. And of course, I'm going to summarize a paper I'm on. And lo and behold, what's the topic? X-ray. We're going to talk about X-ray and chiropractic. But before we get there, one last question, John, and you'll have you'll have up to 5 minutes to elaborate on this. So, chiropractic and cultural authority. So there was a time when we would all sit in a room and a grown man or woman might look at you and say you're a chiropractor, and then they would follow with what feels like a racial slur. They might call you a quack. They might call you not a real doctor. And the intent and the heart behind speaking to you that way while looking at you in front of you was the worst. It was a slur. It was a professional slur. And we've lived through that time where people looked at us and spoke to us that way, sometimes with negative vigor. So right now, in my opinion, I'm seeing an improvement in chiropractic cultural authority, different than anything I've ever smelled, tasted, touched, felt in my entire career, which is about half that of yours, John. But I had ChatGPT do an assessment of the top 5 professions in healthcare. I didn't like what it said, so I expanded it to 10. Still didn't get what I wanted, so I went to 15, then I went to 20, and then I gave up. Chiropractic in the United States does not rank in the top 20 healthcare professions to choose in the United States. So the question is, do you see chiropractic driving at 55 or 75 miles an hour towards a cliff? If you do, why, and how do we solve it right now? Because we're about to drive off a cliff.
Well, Jason, I'm so grateful you asked that. By the way, he gave me no heads up on any of these. I think the realization came right after I was elected president of the WFC. It was at a meeting in London, 4 years ago, something like that.
Yep.
And I was very excited for that. So I'm going downstairs, I get into a cab to go to the airport, go to Heathrow and fly home. And the guy said, "Hey, can I get in the car with you?" I go, "Yeah." And he was obviously a successful guy, and he was vineyards in Spain, industrialist. We just had a nice visit, and he was going this and that. So, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm a chiropractor." "Oh, interesting. So, what's a chiropractor? I've never heard of one." Boom, puts the bell. I mean, here I am leaving the hotel where the World Federation of Chiropractic just met. Here's a very educated man. He had no idea what a chiropractor was. Okay. We take it for granted that everybody knows. The answer is they don't. Okay. That's why we need to get the world. That's why on the global stage, WFC is so important. That's why on the national stage, ICA, even ACA, these national associations are important. One of the things WFC needs to do is to support our constituent members to make sure that people are aware of the advantage of chiropractic care and not get off on some fizz thing. When I was in Rwanda, now this will tick people off, but they got to get over it. I did not talk about subluxation. I did not talk about NA. "Oh my God, you didn't know." I met with these guys. I said, "You do understand that the number one disability in the world today is what? It's low back pain." "Oh, we don't treat low back pain." "Well, I don't know about you, but I bet it doesn't people with low back pain." Do I treat that? No, but I get that. That's what they're coming in with, right? Number one disability in the world. You know what that means in the United States? It means you get SDI, you get 2 weeks off, you take sick leave, yada, yada, yada. You know what that means in Rwanda? That means your children die or are sold into slavery. Why? Because you can't feed your children. Why? Because you can't work. See, that's the big picture. They don't care about the words I'm using. What they care about is, oh my God, you can deal with the number one disability in the world as chiropractors? Yes, we're the best people to deal with that. I do not apologize for that. Not for 1 second. Okay, so for us to realize and once the door opens up, then I can talk about the other stuff. But you got to get in the door. You got to deal with the need. One guy said, you can say all this lofty stuff, but if you don't provide the need, you're never going to go any further. You got to provide the cloak, you got to provide the food, and you got to provide the healthcare that's going to treat their problem to make them healthier and more functional so that the world can see it. But all this other stuff, all these other arguments and stuff, it's just got to go by the wayside. And the best way for them to go by the wayside, Jason, is ignore them. And that's what I did. That's what I did. I blocked those guys. Every once in a while, somebody would send me the link. I don't want to see it.
Right.
I don't want to see it. I don't have time to read their nonsense. All I want to do is tell people about unique chiropractic care. This is how it's going to change not only their life, but your country's life and the world, and whatever we can do to do that. Do I think we're going 75 miles an hour towards the cliff? No. I still see hope. We're not going to jail. We just need to keep fighting the battle. We just need to keep fighting and things like this to provide the opportunities for people to understand of what we do. And what do? We can seek people well without drugs and surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, keep it simple. That's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah,
Well
I love
said.
it. I love it.
Well said.
Thank you. Very well said. Before I go into our research paper, anything that you'd like to say, Joe, to wrap us up as we wind up?
Well, yeah, before you go into the end of it, first, I'm glad that you're doing the research study because I totally forgot. I'm so used to D doing it. And when you were saying that, I'm like, is he going to want me to go through a research study? I'm like, oh no, because yeah, even though I write these, I'm like, I don't have anything prepared for it. And you know me, I like to prepare. Um, One of the things I just want to announce for everybody out there is a shameless plug. We do have a seminar, chiropractic biophysics rehab seminar coming up. Cervical rehab is in Utah, first weekend of March 6th, 7th, in American Fork, Utah. So if you like to ski, let's pray to the snow gods. There will be more snow. But come out there. It's always we have a unique venue this time. And so that's, you can find out more on idealspine.com. And then I just want to give a shameless plug that we're all at Parker seminars coming up here in February. We have a booth. I know the best booth there. Sorry, John, if WFC is there, but 1001 is the best booth at Parker. I'm just kidding because it's right next to CBP. But seriously, we're going to be there. So if any of you guys that are listening, please stop by the booth. We got some great things that we're going to share at CBP as well as at our booth for Posture Screen. And of course, we got you guys that are there. So if you haven't been, Parker's been amazing the last couple of years. We've been, and I sit back and I remember what Parker was when I was a fledgling chiropractor, if you will, when I was there with Don, and it was just huge. I mean, last year and this year, it's really a great experience. So I encourage everybody to come by to that. And yeah, that's all I got to say. So hopefully that's enough,
Love it,
Jason.
Joe. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And so definitely Parker is going to be amazing. I know John's going to be there. I'll be there. Joe, you'll be there. Deed Harrison will be there.
Yep.
Like you said, we'll have the Posture Co booth and the CBP booth. So lots is big and exciting. Really, kudos to Dr. Morgan for how he's built up Parker. He's just done a fantastic job, and I want to acknowledge him. So as we wrap up and we conclude in the spirit of the CBP podcast, the original chiropractic podcast, we're going to go over a research paper. And Joe, you had mentioned that Don Harrison, without Don, we may not have radiograph rights in chiropractic in the United States. And there are countries that don't have those. So, it is important for a profession that you want to keep your scope, right? And then for me, this is the opinion according to Jason. We want to maintain chiropractic in the United States as drug-free, surgery-free, maintain subluxation and protect our rights to detect and correct those things. And so with the folks that do structural rehabilitation, the corrective care approaches, John does Pedabond, Joe, you and I, we do chiropractic biophysics, and there's other approaches in chiropractic that also use pre and post mensuration to assess subluxation, and then to assess the evidence-based intervention that proves that we've corrected that, or determines whether we have completed the need for treatment or if there's a rationale to continue treating. So a really important topic came up, and I'm looking at my screen on the summary that I wrote really quickly. But in the Clinical Journal of Medicine, this is a Q1 journal out of Europe, and we were fortunate enough a couple years ago to publish a paper called "Examining the Clinical Opinions and the Experience Regarding Utilization of Plain Film Radiography in the Spine." So this paper was a survey of practicing chiropractors in the United States. So the reason that this paper is important is there's been a lot of debate, both in and outside of the United States, on whether spinal X-ray should be limited to only red flags, limited to pathology or assessment only, or if there's a broader biomechanical analysis, care planning, and outcome-based care in utilizing X-ray. So until now, most of the debate has been driven by guidelines. It's been one-sided. There's been a lot of opinion pieces. But what hasn't been done up until this paper was published was asking the practicing chiropractors directly. Um, Please note the emphasis on practicing chiropractors, because some of the loud vocal minority is a fringe in chiropractic that doesn't practice, right? All they've done is been in the classroom or they've taught in the classroom. So what the authors did is they surveyed over 4,300 chiropractors, and 3,641 US doctors ended up being included in the analysis. Through statistical analysis, through psychometricians and again statisticians, this was a clinically valid sample. So we use advanced statistics, factor analysis, we use the Roche modeling. In other words, this wasn't a casual survey. It was methodologically sound. Here's what we found out, and I'll be quick. 73% of the chiropractors surveyed reported that they personally take X-rays in their practice as opposed to referring them out. 73%, gentlemen. Does
Yeah.
that surprise you?
No, I mean, because I took X-rays on every single patient.
Yeah, yeah. So here's a number that really surprised me, and I like it. 92% said that they find value in spinal radiographs beyond just pathological assessment.
Yep.
92% of surveyed chiropractors. So of surveyed chiropractors, for somebody listening that may not like what I'm saying or may have critique for what I'm saying, who were surveyed. For example, did we just survey Pedibond doctors? Did we just survey NUCA doctors? Did we just survey an association that favors X-ray? No. The survey went out through Chiro Congress and the chiropractic associations that represent chiropractors throughout the nation. I can't think of a fairer, broader sample base or a database to survey, because you're going to get everybody there. It's
Right.
all 50 states in our territories. 87% of these chiropractors said X-rays are important for biomechanical analysis. 83% said X-ray is vital for them to perform chiropractic in their chiropractic practice. And 67% of those surveyed said it helps measure their clinical outcomes. That is, you do a treatment, your typical assessment for your chiropractic intervention is inclusive of taking an X-ray. And then after you've done your intervention, you use a follow-up radiograph to determine, is care complete? Do you need more care? What do we do next?
Yep.
93% said sharing X-ray findings with patients improves outcomes. There is a subsection in healthcare, gentlemen, that says that, and I don't care if it's chiropractic or medicine or psychiatry or psychology or whatever, there's a subsection of this profession that says, if you find an abnormal finding, don't tell the patient. Don't tell the patient the truth, because you're skewing their ability to get better. And look, I'm a reasonable person. I can walk around the wheel of perspective. Let me tell you something. If I had a finding and my doctor lied to me, a live eye admission, and didn't tell me what I had, I would be way more upset than them thinking that they're protecting me by not telling me the truth.
Totally.
And, and finally, almost 99% believe that x-rays pose a very low or no risk to patients. What's the risk? Well, the risk that has come after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, after the bombs were dropped on those countries at the end of World War II, is there were theoretical papers that were published that extrapolated mathematically if X happened at a certain dose of X-ray, then Y must occur. Therefore, there's a cumulative dose of X-ray. Paul Oakley gave me this story, and I love it. It's comparing X-ray and radiation to water use. So would we agree that when you live on planet Earth and you're a human being, that you need an element of sunlight and radiation to be healthy? Will we agree on that?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. So the same applies to water. So radiation and water, you need a certain dose of water to live. If you don't have enough water, what happens?
You die.
You die. What if you get too much water all at once right now?
You die.
You die. And so there's a certain amount of radiation. And then what you do, like with food and water, is you metabolize radiation. And so recently, it appears that it's being considered by the Department of Energy that the ALARA, the radiation doses, are going to be abandoned. And there's an article coming out in the ICA quarterly journal about this coming up. So I was an author on this paper. We worked on it for 2 years. Deed is not an author on this paper. And so I wanted to present a paper that I was involved in. And if you guys don't have any questions, I was absolutely honored to be able to meet with you two today and talk about the events in chiropractic and then finish properly with the research paper.
I thank you very much, Jason. And I think it's a very timely paper because there's a lot of people out there that say that we shouldn't take X-rays and things like that. And we're not here to tell you how you need to practice, but don't take away our rights to practice the way that we want, that were legally bestowed upon us. And we know that it makes a difference. And I, even to this day, like, I don't adjust anybody without having seen their X-rays. It's just because I need to know what to do. Posture, as much as I love my app self posture screen, it only tells us one portion of it, right? And so X-ray is so vital. So I'm glad the survey was done because a lot of kids that are in schools now, they don't, some of them were never exposed to this depending on where they went, right? So I think it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you. John, any closing comments?
Um, I just want to thank you guys for having me on. You guys have always been supporters. That again, you've never said, hey, you have to do it this way or that way. You've always presented another option. And again, my vision is the vision. I want everybody in the world to have the same opportunity for chiropractic care that I had when I was 19 years old, and it saved my
Yep.
life.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I want. That's my vision here. Uh, I can't outgive God, and I can't outgive chiropractic. So that's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. Love you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Dr.
Thank
John
you.
Maltby, Secretary General, fourth Secretary General ever in history of the World Federation of Chiropractic. Dr. Joe Ferrantelli, Chief Technical Officer for Chiropractic Biophysics and CEO of Posture Co. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for an amazing evening.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.